Hello, welcome. Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 25, Critic of Knowledge Society, we are going to start our lecture with topic Accessibility of ICT Infrastructure in Knowledge Society, the Internet. In the previous unit on Knowledge Society, we have seen how the ICT infrastructure of tele and internet-based information dissemination technologies act as the backbone of the knowledge societies. In this information age, Internet is the largest self-governing organization, all pervasive. Even those opposed to the globalization depend on it to exchange ideas and mobilize support. While the Internet facilitates exchange of ideas, access to knowledge, communication between the diverse people, etc., it also alters the structure of knowledge and proves advantageous to those who have better access to it. The infotechnological revolution is restructuring the global social economic equations, shifting from income divide to knowledge divide. But how can Internet and corollary technologies contribute to the building of knowledge societies without universal access to knowledge and information? How can people benefit from the Internet if they lack access or if they are in constant fear of prosecution? In the so-called knowledge society, more than 850 million people in the developing countries are excluded from the wide range of information and knowledge. The poor in the developing countries remain much isolated economically, socially, and culturally from the bargaining information and the progress in arts, science, and technology. Little is known about the barriers to the evolution and growth of knowledge society in developing countries in spite of advancements in the use of information and communication technologies. Real disparities exist in the access to and use of information and communication technology between countries, and the international digital divide between groups within countries and the domestic digital divide. There is a wealth of real and anecdotal evidence to support this statement. The volume of statistics is impressive and persuasive. In the entire continent of Africa, there are a mere 14 million phone lines, fewer than in either Manhattan or Tokyo. Wealthy nations comprise some 16% of the world's population, but command 90% of the Internet host computers. Of all the Internet users worldwide, 60% reside in North America, where a mere 5% of the world population reside. 1 in 2 American is online compared with only 1 in 250 Africans. In Bangladesh, a computer costs the equivalent of 8 years average pay. Underlying trends are often lost in the heated debate over how to define the problem, but a pattern emerges from within the statistics. There is an overall trend of growing ICT disparities between and within the countries. All countries, even the poorest, are increasing their access to and use of ICT, but the information have countries are increasing their access and use at such an exponential rate that in effect the divide between the countries is actually growing. Within countries, all groups, even the poorest, are also increasing their access to and use of ICT, but within countries the information has and increasing access and use at such an exponential rate that in effect the division within countries is also actually growing. This basic pattern of disparities is repeated again and again with other technology such as telephones. There is a wide disparity in access to phones. In 1998, there were 146 telephones per thousand people in the world, but only 19 per thousand in South Asia and only 3 per thousand in countries such as Uganda. Mobile phones show a similar disparity for every 1,000 people in the world. 55 had mobile phones in 1998, but only 1 person in 1,000 had a mobile phone in either South Asia or Uganda. Two basic disparities exist in the affordability of ICTs, in the basic cost of the technology and in the cost of the technology relative to per capita income. Access costs are almost 4 times as expensive in the Czech Republic and Hungary as in the United States. Outside a few select countries, only wealthy individuals and sections of the middle class can currently afford access. The majority of the people in the developing countries cannot afford the technology even when it is available, so usage remains low. Poverty remains the greatest barrier to internet growth in Africa. The monthly connection cost for the internet in Africa exceeds the monthly income of a significant portion of the population. Now, if we turn to the domestic scene, we can see that ICT, however, function in a societal context. Most reports on disparities in ICT access within countries look at the problem according to socio-economic criteria such as race, income, geographical location, education, age, gender, etc. If we take the case of the India, we can see that globalization and information age have led to a diverse social formation in India within and between societies. A large section has remained outsiders from within, being subordinated and excluded from the dominant processes of globalization and knowledge economy. Indian societal context is ridden with unequal distribution of resources and divides based on the caste, class, ethnicity and gender. Illiteracy, low income and spatial isolation widely contribute to sustain the pre-existing social exclusion. Along time, there are also the dimensions of digital divides of various sorts. These divides are between rich and poor, between urban and rural, between English-speaking, upwardly mobile, literati, and non-English-speaking rest of the people. These digital divides are again associated with the varied extent of access of the electricity, telephone and computer in different states in India. In the globalized world, while these has emerged areas of inclusion, there also exists a vast section which is excluded from within. While most of the urban areas have been connected with the forces of globalization and ICT networks, and a distinct category of elites have emerged therein as the ICT-driven digital ratis. Within the same urban setup, a large segment of workforce working mostly in the unorganized sector and surviving in a subhuman existence has remained excluded from the ICT access. In the rural areas, on the other hand, while the rudimentary forms of connectivity have only touched the upwardly mobile gentry, the agricultural laborers, tenants, poor peasants, and the artisans who represent the vast section of the marginalized people of India has remained excluded. Their educational and economic status often bar them from getting integrated with the information age. Now let us move to the next point, the linguistic diversity and cultural identity. Here we may analyze the impact of certain incidents of the information society on social and cultural development. Culture is at the heart of the contemporary debates about identity, social cohesion, and the development of a knowledge-based economy. The promotion of linguistic diversity on global information networks, the production of local and indigenous content on the internet, and the universal access to cyberspace are central issues. Language is one of the major barriers to the formation of the perfect knowledge society in developing countries. Each day, over 2 million pages are added on the internet, but there is a very small content representation on the net in a vernacular languages of the southern countries. Statistics points out that the over 85% of the content on the net is in English, yet fewer than 1 in 10 people worldwide speak that the language. Further, with high rates of illiteracy in the developing countries, people who are unable to read the content even in local languages would be excluded from the knowledge sharing network. Thus, the literally well connected have an overpowering advantage over the illiterate poor, whose voices and concern would be left out of the global conversation. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.